You ready? Okay. The time is now 5:30, and we're going to call to order the Narragansett Town Council work session. Today is September 5th, 5:30 p.m. And this work session is to interview applicants for the Zoning and Planning Board of Review. So we have 5 candidates we're going to interview. So we'll call each one up individually, and the council members will ask questions, and then we'll move on from there, allotting each candidate a potential of 15 minutes. So we'll first candidate we will call up is Mr. Tom Callahan, who is serving as an alternate currently.
Good evening, councilors.
Okay, so we'll let you just introduce yourself, give a little bit of information about yourself, and then I'll ask the council members to ask any questions they may have.
Okay, my name is Tom Callahan. I live at 26 Baltimore Avenue in Narragansett. We've owned our home since 2011. Born and raised in Rhode Island, graduated from the University of Rhode Island in 1974. Yikes. Spent a little time in Washington, D.C. as a congressional staff aide, out to St. Louis, did a couple of things there, ran a nonprofit organization, and worked for the AFL-CIO as a political organizer there. Came back, worked, decided to land in Northeast Connecticut. It was halfway between where I worked and halfway between here and Rhode Island. So we spent 33 years in Northeastern Connecticut. I worked for Aetna Life and Casualty for 9 years. I was basically ran their philanthropy program and their social investment program, Greater Hartford and the Greater Hartford area. I left in 1995, went out to the University of Connecticut, spent 22 years there in a variety of senior administrative roles, ranging from chief of staff to the president and the chief of staff out at the health center. I was the university's chief lobbyist for about 2.5 years. I retired in 2016, came over to Rhode Island, worked for a year as the first Deputy Secretary of Commerce with Stephen Pryor, and in the last 6 months working with a group of people who were trying to fix the failed UHIP project that you might recall. I'm fully retired. I do a little consulting with a nonprofit in Providence called Building Futures Rhode Island, and that's my professional background. I'm, like I said, married. My grandkids spend the summer down at the beach with us, and I'm happy to answer any other questions about my background you have.
Thank you for that introduction. We'll start with Councilor Kopech.
Hi, Tom. I actually have, I think, interviewed Tom twice now, so I'm pretty aware of his capabilities, and I think that he's doing a great job on the zoning board now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councilor Ferranti.
Mr. Callahan, thank you. I also did sit in on the last interview as not a council member, and I think you've done an exemplary job on the zoning board at this point. I just had a couple of questions since you've been on a little bit here and able to taste it with the zoning a little bit. Do you believe the town zoning is too restrictive or too permissive in terms of size?
Can I interrupt? I'm having trouble hearing
Me
you
too,
guys. So
yeah.
I don't know if it's the fan or our volume, but I couldn't hear Deb that well. I'm sitting next to Steve and I can't hear him.
Yeah.
So sorry for the interruption.
Sorry for turning the fan
It's the
off,
fan.
too.
Yeah.
I think it's the fan, but the mic.
It
yeah.
is the fan, I'm sure it is. Go ahead. Sorry, Steve.
Well, I think you probably. It's up to you.
Just a question. Start with a question.
All right, that's fine. Tom, as I said, I did sit in on the last interview, even though I wasn't a council member at that point, and I think so far you've been, what I can see, you've been doing a good job on the zoning board, and, getting a flavor of what the zoning is. I had a couple of questions. Since you've been there, I have a question. Do you believe that the town zoning is too restrictive or too permissive in terms of size and structure and usage of lots, residential lots?
I think right now it's in pretty good shape, Steve. With bulk zoning and the rest of it. The problem I think that you're going to face in the relatively near future, starting in January, is state laws changed. and the state law is changed significantly for zoning. I think tonight on your agenda, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to ask the planning board to evaluate what those changes are. I think there were, if I remember correctly, 14 bills that were proposed, 13 were passed. The most significant in my judgment that I'm aware of, I'm not aware of all of them, would be House Bill, I think it's 6059 or 5069, one or the other, which will curtail the zoning board's authority in significant ways and will expand, just for example, right now there is a maximum percentage of a variance that can be granted of 25%. Oh, they may have increased that to 25%, but for the first time, they put a minimum in there. There was never been a minimum in there. There's a minimum in the law right now that says it can't be less than 15%. So that's just an example. I could kind of go through the whole thing that I'm aware of. No longer will the zoning board be able to take into account whether or not somebody's doing something simply for their financial gain. If that was in the past, that was a reason to exclude it. That language has been stricken. So I think it's probably, to answer that question, Steve, would be like asking that question looking in the rearview mirror. I think people have to look forward at what's in that legislation and what does it mean for the town, and how do we deal with that going forward?
Okay, just one more.
Yep.
You kind of answered what I was going to say already with the, these pending zoning changes possibly. Town may be looking at rewriting the whole code. Do you think that there could be some improvements to some of the existing ordinances as far as?
Well, I don't know that there needs to be improvements. I mean, you can prove anything. I will say this. There are provisions in the Narragansett ordinances that I would like to see the planning and/or the zoning board exercise more frequently. I think when we spoke last, I said that, in my judgment, there is an awful lot of weight given to the experts that testify before both boards. There are provisions in the ordinances that were adopted about 2 or 3 years ago that allow, for example, either of the boards to require a peer review of an expert's findings or testimony, whether it be wetlands, whether it be consistency with the town comprehensive plan or whatever. No one's pulled the trigger on that so far. They should. The ordinances are, the procedure is structured in a way that if experts are qualified by the boards and testify, the weight of their testimony outweighs lay testimony simply by matter of law. I think there is a lot of deference paid to experts. I don't think that is necessarily appropriate. Board member doesn't have to believe an expert, doesn't have to take that, but an awful lot of deference is given to the testimony of experts.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Council Law.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Good to see you. Thanks to all 5 of you for coming here tonight. So I've also had the occasion of not to interview you, but to observe you on the zoning board in some discussions. So my question to you would be, do you have any specific goals or initiatives that you'd like to pursue if you are reappointed?
On the zoning board, you really, let me say, from a policy point of view, you really don't have much you can do. You take what comes at you in terms of people file for different permits. Those permits are either can be approved at the building official level or they get kicked up. At that point in time, you're basically looking and reviewing that against what the standards are. Like I said, from my vantage point, the one thing I would like to see, which has nothing to do from a policy point of view, but has more from an administration or operation point of view, I would like to see the boards pull the trigger on the experts. I think that's important. It's probably not as necessary now as it was earlier, but for example, there's a fairly controversial decision that went to the board within the last year. It took 4 hearings to get through it. When it became time to make the decision, the, there was no transcript of the record. So what that meant is any board member who wanted to go back and review 4 nights of testimony could only go back and listen to it on tape. That was before the council basically began to videotape them and with the closed captioning things. That is a very onerous thing because in order to get it precise and right, you're going, listening to it, you're going back, you're going back, you go. It took me, in order to do that, it took me about 16 to 20 hours to get it done. The board should, and we have talked about it but has not yet pulled the trigger, require in those situations that the applicant basically pay for, basically it's an issue of cost, and the applicant should pay for the cost associated with the transcript.
So you're referring to 0 Wilson Drive?
I am referring to 0 Wilson Drive, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Almost.
Hi,
Councilor
Tom.
Sisseling, go
Hi.
ahead.
So I just want you to remind the council, because I've been a part of the interviews too, a little bit about affordable housing. We have a collaborative in the town. We're working extremely hard, low-hanging fruits, big vision, ideas, and just kind of what your philosophy is and for the town of Narragansett. And again, you don't develop the policy, but where do you stand with the affordable housing, just generally speaking?
Well, I think Narragansett should do everything it possibly can to increase the supply of affordable housing and for what I'd say workforce housing, which is also another piece of this in terms of people who have reasonably good paying jobs but can't afford to live here. So as I said before, I have, particularly when I was in St. Louis, I ran a neighborhood association, 60 blocks, 12,000 people, and we had a housing corporation that was trying to develop housing with basically financing that was coming from a blend of sources in order to build houses for people to afford to be in the neighborhood and rehab houses there. When I went to Etna, we worked all over the country. We worked particularly hard in Hartford to basically do a lot of financing of affordable housing. One of the things that I think you need to be vigilant on is in doing affordable housing, you have to do it in a way that it's permanently affordable, that it doesn't basically get lost in the next transaction. And whether that be through land trust or deeded, and whatever the case might be, the subsidy that you're going to use, and there's normally a public subsidy that goes along with this, whether it be the land that's donated, whether it be what used to be CDBG money or a bunch of other, whether it be privately financed subsidy money from something like the Rhode Island Foundation or the United Way or whatever the case might be, those subsidies are what allows you to get the thing done in the first place. You've got to protect that subsidy going forward so it doesn't get lost in the next transaction when the property flips.
I just have one follow-up question. The Affordable Housing Collaborative is presently working on a town-wide mixed use with the component or requirement of percentage of the house, to be affordable. Would you support something like that?
If the council, well, personally, would I support it?
Yeah.
Yes. The council obviously has to pass it in order for that to happen, but
Yeah.
would I support that? Yeah, we've done, we did a significant mixed-use project in stores when I was there. The university was part of a kind of a 3-legged private-public partnership. We put the land in. The town basically put a bunch of public subsidy into it along with the state and the feds. We had a private developer, and we developed mixed-use, retail on commercial on the first floor, 600 units of housing on the top floor, student housing, which in some respects does not have, which has some applicability to what we're doing here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I would come back to a question you asked after I get done with that.
Okay. Well, I interviewed you before, and I just want to thank you for your time and talents that you contribute to our town. Really much appreciated. I don't have any follow-up questions. I've, again, interviewed you in the past, so if you would like to follow up with your answer to the question.
Just one other thing. I spent 22 years at the senior level of the University of Connecticut. I know how those places operate, and I know how they work. The University of Connecticut had the largest on-campus housing program, one of the 4 largest on-campus housing programs in the country. We housed almost 68% of our kids on campus. That said, we had a bunch of people who were living off campus and the lifestyle conflicts between students and residents became a problem. So if I were king or queen, and I didn't have to wait for something to come to me, but could basically jump in, I'd like to get into understanding better the University of Rhode Island's business plan for housing as it goes forward. I see something that they're, and I don't know whether it's completed or not, that they're going to do an additional 500 beds. It's not clear to me whether that's done or not. I don't know whether there are constraints. They run their own water supply system. They run their own sewer system there. I don't know whether there are infrastructure restraints up there or not. But there seems to be, to me, an opportunity to redirect some of the stuff that we've seen going on here for a while. And I, you know, if I could be part of that, I'd like to be part of that. So,
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Ms. Ellen Corno, who is also serving currently as an alternate. So you could just introduce yourself, give a little bit about yourself, and then we'll ask questions.
Good evening, council members. My name is Ellen Corno. I am a relatively recent resident of the town of Narragansett. I purchased a house in 2021, but did not move here permanently until about maybe a little before this time last year, because I renovated the house, and I didn't have to go through zoning because I didn't do anything that required zoning, but did go through, you know, made sure that I complied with the town ordinances, et cetera. So I am an attorney, and I have to say I absolutely love living here. So, but I am an attorney. I'm a partner at a law firm called Savage Law Partners in Providence, Rhode Island. My primary area of practice is municipal bonds. So a lot of my clients are cities and towns in the state, state agencies, bond financing authorities. I'm extremely familiar with municipal law in the state of Rhode Island, familiar with multiple charters, been to many, many, many council meetings, zoning hearings. My focus is not zoning, but I definitely, in some of the projects that I've worked on, there's a zoning component. So that's what made me, you know, interested in this position to begin with about this time last year. I think that's probably enough background related to this appointment and what skills are necessary for serving on the zoning board.
Thank you. Councilor Kopech, I'll do the same.
For being here. Sorry. I was just curious, have you had an opportunity to actually sit in on zoning board meetings and participate?
Absolutely, for a year now, about almost a year now, almost a year.
As an alternate or actually?
As
have
an
to serve?
alternate, but I am proud to say, I think except for one excused absence because I had to recuse myself from a matter, I attended every single meeting, and there were many times where I was the required fifth member.
Right, okay.
So, yes.
That's what I was getting
Yes.
at. Okay. So do you consider yourself familiar with the various and sundry elements of the work on the zoning board?
I am familiar. I will say that it definitely, people on the zoning board that have been there for years probably can still run circles around me, but I am very familiar with the zoning ordinance and the board's workings and how, you know, how cases come, how they're appealed and all this.
And you're familiar with the ordinances associated with zoning in Narragansett?
Yes.
You understand all that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
I'll go with Councilor Ferrandi again.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Emily. Since you've been on the board a little time, you've probably heard about the bulk zoning.
Yes.
And it was, you know, I guess some people might say it was a long time coming, you know, trying to put some limits or get some standards on single-family housing and what can be done and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, how do you feel it's working so far, and do you think it needs to be changed? Does it need to be a little more restrictive or less restrictive?
So I understand, I mean, I think everybody understands the purpose of the bulk zoning ordinances, and that's basically to make sure that density is kept in check, and we don't have very large buildings on very small parcels. So I personally had designed the house that I renovated to not have to worry about the bulk zoning, because the bulk zoning ordinances, at least the floor area ratio part of the bulk zoning ordinances, came in right when I was designing the house, and I missed it. So we complied with it. I do know that there are many requests for a variance from at least the floor area ratio that the zoning board is very restrictive of. There isn't a lot of variances that we give for, that the board has approved for floor area ratio and lot coverage. Sometimes lot coverage, if it's a minimal amount, with the new laws, the zoning board may not have any discretion with that anymore. It may have to be actually, there's no way that the zoning official is going to be able to not approve that. So with the new laws coming into effect and the new ordinances that you'll have to adopt, the amendments to ordinances that you'll have to adopt, there's not going to be as much, there may be less flexibility of the zoning board to impose some of those restrictions. But I think it's working fine. I do see people come in and say, but it's just 200 square feet. It's just this. But an ordinance is an ordinance, and if it was passed for a reason, and unless there's a very good justifiable reason permitted by the zoning ordinance, you have to deny it. And I think it's working the way it was intended. But you guys are the ones that actually set the policy by adopting the ordinance. But we enforce it for you.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. Appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Council Waller?
Hello, I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, so thank you for serving on the board. Question for you, and I don't even know if it's appropriate to ask, but the meeting that you recused yourself was the meeting for the foreign related with the 2100 group. Can you give us any reason into
Sure,
it?
yeah, I can give you the reason. I represent a town whose solicitor happened to be one of the attorneys representing the appellants. So I spoke with, Chairman Manning and the attorney Marcello, Marcello, and we had, we decided that it was best, in the interest that that I recused myself. We didn't want any, and she, actually, the attorney who represented the appellants, hires me. So it kind of was
Okay, so
unfortunately.
appreciate your explanation. So it has nothing to do with the organization of 2100? Okay. I just want-
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. No, it was more that the parties involved, there could be some,
Understood, and I appreciate the fact that you did that.
So, yeah,
I appreciate that very much. So if you could have voted that night, how would you have voted? Would you have upheld the four, or would you have?
So, okay, this was a frustrating bunch of, appeals, 5 appeals. I would have, when I went in there, my mind, with reading the materials and reading what we had in front of us for the meeting, I was pretty much up in my mind thinking I was going to uphold the decision. I think it was, and which is, I do believe that there's a way of doing a 3-person or a 4-person for student ordinance. There's a way of doing it. Unfortunately, what's happened in Narragansett's case is procedurally it's been overturned for different reasons. But I fully support ordinances like that, like, living ordinances, where it makes a better way of life ordinances or something. So I would have upheld that. Having heard some of the testimony, I think the issue, the problem with that, with the particular ordinance is enforcement, and being able to get the right evidence to be able to show that the parties truly were unrelated. Luckily, in those cases, there was some court testimony because they ran a parallel course to go to court. There was some court testimony where they actually admitted they were unrelated. So for that purpose, but you don't always have that. What you have is an inspector or a zoning official going out, and it's very difficult. The people in the house are not always cooperative. Hard to, for whatever privacy reasons, hard to say that they are unrelated. So I think it's one of my suggestions for the zoning ordinance and for those particular zoning, if that's what the town chooses to, put a 3-person or a 4-person in there, is to do something that will help the investigation or the enforcement of those ordinances.
Good suggestions, and we're working on that right now. Question for you, the last one for you, but it made me think when Mr. Callahan brought this up, it does seem that the expert witnesses that come in, a lot of weight is given to them, but it also seems like we use the same expert witnesses over and over again. So I wanted to know, your comments on both.
So, being a lawyer, assuming that you can properly qualify an expert witness and you have the evidence and evidence in the record that says, I've served as a planner, I've done this, I have this degree, I have that. Expert witnesses usually do carry more weight in a normal court proceeding. That's why they're considered expert witnesses, because they're experts. So, but having the same ones, it's hard to say because it's their choice. It's the people that come in to do their zoning case, they choose who their witnesses are, and sometimes it's the same ones because they're just so familiar with Narragansett and the zoning ordinances in Narragansett. I feel like in a lot of the times where I was sitting, and we're able to ask questions even if we're not sitting, as the 5th member, as a 5-member board, but I feel I asked good questions and probing questions, and I think that's where you really have to go. You have to have zoning members who are not afraid to ask the right questions and not afraid to probe and to get people to not just take their word for it, in other words. So,
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments about the expert witnesses. I like that. Next, Councilor Cecilia Banana.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi.
So the last council supported and voted for the bulk zoning, and I was a part of that. And I know the intent so that oversized houses are on small lots. I tried really hard last term to do some revisions. There was some calculations in the FAR that people across the town brought up to me over and over again, whether it was a calculation of an attic and a basement or a swing set in the backyard. And so did you say that a bunch of people come for special use or special variances? So would you think that they need to do some revisions down the road, or are you satisfied with that ordinance the way it stands?
So, mine is not to impose my policy on what the town council wants in these ordinances.
Understood.
However, I will, when you have testimony that you want to, add 100 square feet to the floor area because you want to make your entrance safer, or you want to add a bedroom because you want to bring in your parents to live with you. Hard decisions, and they want to increase the floor area ratio. That's the type of stuff that you just can't, you can't consider.
Right, so whether it's an existing or a new house, so
Right.
it depends. I've just heard a lot of people that would like.
There's a lot of people upset about some of them.
When we see special variances coming over and over again, then we have to kind of say, let's look at this again, because
Yep.
people that say live in Metuxet that want to just improve their porch a little bit to make their home more valuable, look a little
Right.
bit better,
Right.
and can't because they're maxed at the FAR. And so I've just heard that a lot, and so I know you don't design the policy, but
Right.
as a board member, when you're sitting there and they continue to come back with special, exceptions, you kind of say like, did we get this exactly right? So
Exactly.
I just
And
was
then
wondering.
those are hard, those are the hard decisions. But, as I said, it's tough because an ordinance is an ordinance, it's absolute, and you gotta,
Okay, so
unfortunate.
and then I just wanted to ask you too about the affordable housing, as we're looking at sending an affordable housing mixed use townwide, with the requirement of so many units for affordable.
Right.
Just
Right.
overall, your philosophy on the need in Narragansett, and, with so much land being preserved and very little land ready to be developed, I just was wondering your
Right.
sort of idea about affordable.
Right. Land in Narragansett obviously is limited. It's limited by wetlands. It's limited by a whole bunch of other different things, whether it be, open space or conservation land or something like that. But obviously affordable housing is a very, very good goal. And, fully supportive of the actions to make housing affordable. Some of that stuff, so I think I'm correct when I say this, but isn't there some ability for developers to buy out of the affordable, even if you impose limits and unit, number requirements, if you want 10% affordable housing on each new development, can't they buy out by or reducing the numbers? Maybe we eliminate that, or maybe we do something that statewide, I think there's a 10% affordable housing requirement for new housing developments. Narragansett's, not alone. I mean, with the housing prices the way they are, and rents the way they are, I mean, affordable housing is an issue everywhere. The other thought I always kept having is there are some people, and actually a person on my street who has an accessory dwelling unit, and right now they're able to be used for families. I mean, if you ever wanted to rent that for affordable housing, maybe there'd be an exception. Maybe the town council. So little things like that I think about in terms of what could happen. But so yes, fully supportive of the initiatives.
Thank you. No follow-up questions for me, but thank you for your time on the board. And so the next candidate to be interviewed is Mr. Robert Breyer.
Good evening, Town Council. How are you tonight? As you know, my name is Robert Breyer. I've been a Narragansett resident since 2004. Married for 52 years to my lovely wife with 3 kids. Been coming to Narragansett because my great-great-grandfather moved down here in 1930. So I've been coming since I'm 10. I mentioned I did 30 years in the Marine Corps. I was in charge of all the Marine Corps recruiting in New England. I came to work for the town after I retired from the Marine Corps as the housing inspector, trying to clean up a lot of the neighborhoods, and also the community housing officer, where we developed a program to put the stickers on the door. So I don't have all the experience that Tom and Ellen have on the zoning, but I do know a lot about the zoning laws, because when I worked with the former building inspector, I did a lot of zoning work for him. So I'm ready for questions.
Okay, Councilor Kopech.
Once again, Bob, we've been here before, right?
Yes, we have.
Thank you for coming this evening. So you talked a little bit about zoning board and ordinances. Do you have, can you give us some example of your experience with variances, special use permits, and conditional zoning permits? Are you familiar with those terms?
I am. I was not allowed to do 3 of the 4 things you just mentioned. Mostly what I did for the building inspector was site alignment, going to corners where the bushes were too high and you couldn't make the corner without seeing the kids come around. I enforced that. Different things on the property that weren't supposed to be there, I enforced that on the zoning ordinances, which were approved.
Okay.
I believe it was 191-B or something back then.
So one of the requirements of being on the zoning board is to review and understand the Rhode Island Ethics Commission's requirements for a zoning board member. Have you reviewed those? Are you
I
familiar?
have not yet.
Okay. That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Ferrandi?
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Bob. This is, since you were, kind of seeing some what the zoning was like firsthand as you, in your inspector position several years ago, I'm going to pose the question, do you think there can be some improvements in the town as far as single-family housing goes, as far as some of the ordinances and what's allowed in the single-family zones and whatnot, and kind of goes to zoning also, some of the trash ordinances and all. Do you see that the town needs to have some improvements in that?
Well, there's always room for improvement. And I felt, I got to be perfectly honest with you, this is the question that I answered last time that I think put me on the back burner with the town council. We're not dealing with reality. We're dealing with what if. What if you sell your house 20 years down the road and we gave you that 4-bedroom house and now you got 5 kids living in it? I don't think we don't have enough permanent residents in this town. We don't have enough people that can afford houses in this town. So I think when you have a young couple that have a house now, it's too small, and they have now 2 kids, and they want to rebuild, they count their stairway as living area. They count the mechanical room as living area. So you now, on a 5,000 square foot lot, tell this young couple you can only build a 2,000 square foot house. And that gives them 500 square feet per person, when they're not living in the mechanical room and they're not living on the stairs. That should not be counted against living area, in my opinion. So would I help them if I had the opportunity? And like everybody's already said, the zoning board hasn't been able to help anybody so far with that, because it's just a clear no.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Counselor Lawler?
Hey, as a daughter of a Marine, I have to say, Semper Fi, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Sometimes the best person to ask about department is someone who's lived it, and you certainly, working with the building inspector's office, you're out there every single day enforcing our ordinances, and you just went through some bulk zoning suggestions. If you could, could you tell us what we need to improve? What ordinances do we need to improve? I appreciate what you said, and I believe Ellen said it as well, is making it affordable for young families to come to town. I think that's the goal of every single person up on this podium. I know it's a goal. How do you see, what suggestions can you give to us so that we can all complete this goal?
It's a tough question.
I'm sorry.
45 years ago, when Metatuxet was being developed in Pasquaney, they had a loan called the farmer's loan, and you could get a young couple, and that's what it was designed to put, young people into the Narragansett residence. And so you would get a smaller mortgage with a better interest rate if you qualified. Matter of fact, I tried for it, but I didn't know, I had $1,000 in my bank account and I shouldn't have had, because that made me ineligible for that, or to qualify for that. So we have property, I believe, on Clock Road,
We do.
11 acres of land sitting there. Can we build affordable housing there?
No, it's for recreation.
We just actually zoned it historic in multiple areas, so no.
No, okay. I will
But there are
support-
other parts of the town that I think Susan would say, yes, we absolutely would love to do that.
I will support anything to get young couples and permanent residents back, and I'll do anything I can to help for affordable housing.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Cicely Brown?
So, hi, Bob.
Thanks, Sue.
So I know that, you worked with the town. And, you just said you don't have sort of the same experiences as the people behind you, but how would that experience as working with the building inspector's office help you to better serve on the zoning board?
How would the bad experiences?
How would your experience as working with with the building inspector help you on the zoning board, if at all? Like if it would or not?
It would help me because I ran into situations when I was out there with an unloaded gun, making threats I couldn't follow up on. For example, trash. For the first 6 years I was out there making these college kids clean up Eastwood Look, Briggs Farm, Village of Point Judith, I would tell them, if you don't get the yard cleaned up now, I'll give you a $200 fine, when in actuality I couldn't. Then we worked on the zoning, and we actually came out with one of the town councils approved, and we actually started writing checks. That became an issue because when I worked with the police department to put the stickers on the house, they didn't want to enforce it, let them clean the yard up later, No, I want them to clean it up now. So now we have the tools, but we weren't allowed to use them, or they weren't willing to use them. So I believe if you have the tool, you should use it.
Okay. And then, obviously, I keep asking about affordable housing. If you were a member of the zoning board, just philosophically, what's your idea for Narragansett? Although you're not a policy maker, just want to make sure you support housing, because it's been a real tough stretch out there.
I would support anything that you guys come up with. I think you've got a tough job ahead of you. I have a soft spot in my heart. I didn't believe in the changing of when I was doing this in 2020, on a 5,000 square foot lot, you could have 1,250 square feet, and the other 75% had to be permeable. Well, 1,250 and 1,250 on a two-level house, 2,500 square feet, that's more than enough for a family of three or four bedrooms tops. Now, today, we're saying 2,000 square feet, we take 500 off of them, and what are they doing? Now they have a whole garage on the first floor. Now they put their kitchen and their living room on the second floor, and they're now going up 3 flights. Now, and we're right at the max of 35-foot height requirements, when they should have had that two-level house where everybody could have had a view, and now no one has a view, and all we got are these castles going up. So I think changing that 1,250 square foot base was the wrong thing to do.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, last question. So what else would you like us to know about you that makes you a strong candidate for the zoning board?
I follow the rules. So black to me is black, and white is white, and I don't have a gray area. I just follow the rules and do what I can. But I would also come to you and make suggestions to better things that we could do in Narragansett to make life easier, to get more permanent residents, to get our firemen to live in the town, to get our policemen to live in the town. Our school department's falling apart. We had, 2 second grades, 2 third grades, 2 fourth grades. We're down to 1. I've got 2 grandchildren in the school now. They came home today from first day at school. How was school? How many kids in your class? 18. How many in the set? Well, I don't have a homeroom. What do you mean you don't have a homeroom? Well, I start out in social studies every day, and then, well, how many kids were in that class? 12, 7th grade. So I just feel like we're going to lose Narragansett unless we do something for the permanent residents and to get affordable housing so we can get people to move back in and stop renting everything in sight.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Breyer. Thank you. Okay, next up is Ms. Christine Brochu. It's the same thing, just give us a little bit about you, some information about you, and then we'll move on to questions from the council, just like we've been doing. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. My name is Christine Brochu. I live at 9 Wilson Drive. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We bought our house in 1998, and I love being a resident of Narragansett, and so I put my name in to be on the board because I'd like to give back to the town. I've been in the appraisal business since 2003. I became a certified residential appraiser in 2007, and I am currently a tax assessor. I'm a Rhode Island certified assessor for the town of Jamestown. I've worked for the town of West Warwick and also the town of Hopkinton previously. And when it comes to valuation, a big part of valuation is whether it's legally permissible. That's a big deal in valuation, and zoning has always been very interesting to me on how it affects value, because it can positively or negatively affect it.
Thank you. Counselor Kopic?
Good evening, I'm glad to have you here. I did have a question because you live on Wilson Drive, and I was wondering if your interest in this had anything to do with the Zero Wilson Drive situation.
No, I actually I've been thinking about putting my name in since the insurgency. So,
Okay. Okay. So can you tell me if you have any familiarity with some of the acts that the zoning board does, particularly in relation to variances, special use permits, and conditional zoning permits?
I think, if I understand the question correctly, I read through zoning decisions all the time.
Okay.
At my current job, I share a suite with the building and zoning officials, so I constantly hear people coming in with applications. That's what this board has ruled. I was able to sit in on a lot of meetings of the Narragansett one for Zero Wilson Drive. And I think it's very important that the ordinance book is, it's read, it's understood, and that when updates need to happen, it gets updated when it can.
Okay, and just because I like to ask the same questions, have you had a chance to review the Rhode Island Ethics Commission requirements that are part of the requirement to be a member of this board?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ferrandi?
Thank you, Christine. I'm going to kind of circle back around. You've heard a lot about this, so far. Some people speak about the bulk zoning. Are you familiar with it at all? And how do you feel that it's working in the town?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. Right, let me ask, do you think that there could be some improvements in the town zoning ordinances as far as residential property goes? I know you mentioned about uses and types, and sometimes, there's a maximum use of a lot based on size or width and all that. Do you think currently the way the zoning is, I know the bulk zoning has worked a little bit with that, do you think there could be some improvements in that?
Well, being a board member, I think I'd be more interested in how it's written and whether I'm being equitable. We're giving an equitable decision for each taxpayer that's coming in front of the board, so we're treating everyone fairly. But to speak specifically on how it could be changed, I don't have an opinion on that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Lawler?
I'm going to piggyback on to Deb's question, and nice to meet you. Zero Wilson Drive, I saw that address as well. Did the zoning board get that one right? How would you have voted?
Well, I was in opposition of it, so I would have not, I wouldn't have gone with it. I think the zoning board made a decision on the facts that were in front of them and what they felt was who put forward the best case. And I believe that they tried hard. It was very difficult that I had to go to so many different meetings, and they're having to listen to audio. I requested the audio. I can't even understand it. You can't hear it. It was horrible.
Yeah.
But they tried really hard, and even though it didn't go in the favor that I would have liked,
Yeah.
I think the zoning board gave it a fair shake, and I think they worked really hard on it.
I think that they worked hard on it as well. I think that the bulk zoning ordinances, I just can't see how that one passed. It just, to me, especially with coastal resources, we have such an active coastal access people in this town, and I think that they blew it as well. They should have been there backing up you and your neighbors saying, we should make this into some type of an open space. So just had to put that out there. Question for you, on zoning decisions often involve balancing the needs of property owners with the interests of the community as a whole. How do you plan to strike a balance to ensure fairness in your decision-making?
Well, in my job, day-to-day, it's equity and being a tax assessor. And you have to treat everybody fairly. You have the rules, and you go by the rules. And then when you have a question, you reach out to the solicitor for clarity if you're unsure. And also senior board members on what they feel like the town's intent was when they wrote it.
Thank you.
Councilor Cicely-Bonano?
Hi, Christine. So you lived in Narragansett since 1998, is that what you said?
We bought our
House in 1998.
We
And
lived here before that.
yes, and so I looked at your resume, and I love that you want to give back to the community. So can you make the third Thursdays of the month if you were appointed to the board?
Yes,
So that's not a problem.
not a problem.
And then I think you answered your question about, because I was going to ask you the same question about your job, fair and equitable to all, and just apply the rules so there wouldn't be any favoritism. You use the law and apply it.
Yes, yes.
And then finally, my affordable housing, you've probably seen things in other communities. Just basically, how do you feel about a mixed use? If it came to the zoning board, would that be a policy that you would accept and support based on some affordable housing units in that mixed use?
Yes, if it was allowed by the ordinance book or allowed by the town, then yes, I would support it. I think with growing population, we aren't creating any more land. We have to best utilize what we have. And, in Europe, they've got it down. They really try to contain where they're going to develop, and then they keep the open space where it's going to be, because that's how you keep clean water. That's how how you have a very healthy ecosystem, is just my opinion.
And I don't know you at all, but I think you've done a great job with your questioning, so I have no other issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roche. So I just have a clarifying question, because when I was reviewing the boards and commissions application, that was part of our packet to review, it had the commission you were interested in serving on as the planning board. Is that correct? Or was it, were you?
Planning and zoning.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and another question, so just to, in regards to time commitments, it is not just the third Thursday at 6:30. There's a lot of, there's other meetings, special meetings. There's also hearings and site visits. So would you be able to commit that time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything else that you would like to tell us about yourself that you believe would make you a great fit for the zoning board?
Just that I pride myself on being an honest person and working very hard, and I will work very hard for the town of Narragansett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay, and the last candidate to interview is Mr. Albin Kamer.
Hi, my name is Al Keimer.
Keimer.
I've been not a resident, I've owned in Narragansett for probably 12 years, been a resident for about 5 years in Briggs Farm. I have about 40 years of experience, obviously in publishing, which has nothing to do with this, but I have about 30 years as a licensed remodeler in Connecticut. So I did a lot of remodeling. I worked closely with the various zoning, building inspectors in various towns. In Narragansett, I've been working with the building inspector there as well. Recently, I've been involved with the town manager and CRMC over some disputes over some other people's property and the lack of enforcement of policies and things. So, I think that's one area I see there's issues with, and that's really with enforcement of various departments. So I think as we build policies, I want to make sure that we can enforce them, basically. And it's not that you specifically enforce them, but they can be enforced by the appropriate people. That's all I think I have.
Thank you. Councilor Kopic.
Sorry, good evening, welcome. So going back to, the whole purpose of the zoning board and the ordinances associated with this zoning board, are you familiar with the variances, special use permits, and conditional zoning permits that are the meat and the potatoes of what the zoning board is here for?
I don't know all of them, but.
Well,
I
no,
can
that's
read them.
okay.
Yes.
I don't either.
Yes, I am familiar with some of them.
Okay. And, my other question was, have you reviewed the Rhode Island Ethics Commission requirements for
I've
this
started
position?
to, but I have not made it all the way
Haven't
through.
finished it, okay. You made some comment earlier about being involved with some disputes. I was curious about what you were referring to.
There's property that's wetlands
Mm-hmm.
that an owner has cleared illegally, didn't take out any permits whatsoever.
Mm.
So I'm trying to get the town involved to enforce and CRMC, and we're actually in court now as well. There's an injunction against this person, so we'll see where that goes.
Okay,
So I'm pushing the town and CRMC to get it enforced.
all right. Well, thank you. Good
Play
luck.
by the rules.
Good luck. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilor Ferrandi.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kamer. Are you familiar with the bulk zoning a little bit at
Yes.
all? Okay.
Yes, I am.
About the size and the density and
Yes.
whatnot?
Yep.
Okay. In that respect, on the bulk zoning, have you seen cases in your neighborhood that it's, it's worked and it's been preventing some of the larger houses massed
Yeah,
on some of the new items?
yes, I see it working, yes.
Okay.
Where people are being denied trying to put on too large of additions.
Right.
So it's being enforced, that's great.
Do you believe that the town zoning, there's still room for improvement in some might be too restrictive or too permissive in terms of size and structure on the lots and usage?
I think there's always room for improvement. I mean, as new ordinances, the bulk one goes into play, you have to tweak it afterwards. So, I'm sure it needs to be tweaked, So, yeah, there's always room.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Lawler.
Hi, Al. So Al lives in my neighborhood, and I'm very familiar with what he is discussing with the non-permitted lot, which is interesting because I've been able to see, and I want to share with you all a little bit of the approach that he's taken in my neighborhood for an issue zoning related. There was a lot that was deemed, I believe it was deemed unbuildable.
Correct.
And it was purchased, and an individual went in and made improvements, including an alcove at the top of the drive area, so the water would then draw down. So I'll let you explain what approach, who did you contact in town? And it's a great example of what you would do if you're on the zoning board. So can you explain in more detail?
Well, I think
How
I
you
reached out
approached
to
it.
you to help me get
To who to
I
find.
can reach out to initially, only because I knew you.
Right.
You put me in contact with the town manager. He then got, Public Works involved, because again, there's water now going onto the road, spilling over to the road. There's pipe that he put in himself, which is the wrong size pipe, which is again diverting water onto the street. So I've been working with the town. The town is kind of pushing it back to CRMC, saying, any water or runoff is managed by CRMC. CRMC has a cease and desist on this person. He's disobeyed it, flat out. So we had to take it to the next step and get attorneys involved, and it's in court now. And he has an injunction, and about 3 weeks ago, and he's finally stopped. Okay, and we'll see where it goes from there. Hopefully, he obeys it and restores the property back. It is wetlands, and it's non-buildable. He can't do anything.
So I think we're having a theme tonight. All 5 members are saying there's no gray, it's black and white, and you'll enforce. Okay, great. So let me ask you one of my canned questions that everybody else seems to be enjoying so much. What do you see as the most significant zoning-related challenge or opportunity in Narragansett right now?
I think, again, the biggest thing I see is enforcement. You know, I mean, you can drive around and see where people have done things that they shouldn't have, whether it be put, you know, these large sheds on property now as well. That takes up part of, you know, the buildable lot. They, you know, they've put on, you know, garages with either no permits or whatever. People have started putting additions on, and I think there was a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the building inspector where he started to put an addition on without the permits. Oh, I was going to get to it. You weren't going to get to it. You know, you were just trying to do it illegally, basically. You know, so there has to be a better way of, you know, various departments enforcing all these ordinances and things.
So in the case you just mentioned, that was on Palm Beach Avenue, and the
Yes,
planning
that's-
board actually made them, you know, actually return the property to the
Yeah.
condition. All right, so, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Cicely Bonanno?
I spoke to you on the phone
Yes.
just briefly because I hadn't interviewed you or talked with you. So I just want to ask you too on how you feel about mixed use townwide for affordable housing. If a policy came your way and you were sitting on the zoning board, would that be something that you would be able to
Oh,
support?
I'm 100% behind that. My experience in Connecticut, you know, I was involved with a development we put in, and a percentage of it had to be low-income housing. So I am familiar with, you know, some of that. So,
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to do a follow-up. You were talking about, you know, following the ordinances or enforcing them is difficult. What would you suggest? I mean, you seem a little frustrated by the fact that I just picked up on that, Al. But, so since, you know, you had some dealings, what would you say that would be something to improve? If we have some great laws on the books, but I think we find enforcement on a lot of the issues as a challenge. And so an enforcement officer, I don't know, what do you think?
yeah, well, I've asked the same question to like CRMC, because, you know, when they did this cease and desist on this property, they said you can fine them up to so much a day. Why aren't you fining him? We don't have an enforcement officer, basically. You know, so they have no way of enforcing, and, you know, somebody going to these properties that are in violation, and if they see work done, stop them, basically. I don't know what the town has in place as far as an enforcement officer, if there is such a thing. If not, maybe that's what they need. And they need to drive through our neighborhoods and just look for things, basically, that are out of the ordinary. You know, or somebody's building something. Oh, if they're building something, there should be permit type of thing. You know, so,
And just lastly,
yeah.
why should we select you as a candidate?
I'm about to retire. So, you know, I want to, you know, contribute to wherever I can, you know, whether it be here or I'm going to be volunteering in various organizations as well, because I believe in giving back, you know, so hopefully I can contribute to the town as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my question, you probably already just answered it with that. I was going to ask if you were going to have the time to commit, because it is meetings. Okay, thank you. Thanks. And thanks for coming here for the interview. And I don't have any more follow-up questions. Thank you for all those answers. So with that being said, unless you have any final thoughts on what you think would make you a
I'm
great
fine.
candidate.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, great.
Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you to all the candidates. So just in summary, the Zoning and Plating Board of Review is comprised of 5 members, and they serve 5-year terms, and 2 alternates serving 1-year terms. And the meetings are held on the 3rd Thursday of each month at 6:30 p.m. So there's 1 vacant member seat and 2 alternate member seats available for appointment, reappointment on the Zoning and Plating Board of Review. And so we did have 2 alternates request reappointment. We did have a full member request reappointment. However, everyone's limited to 2 terms per the council rules and that are in place. And so the council members were given all the applicants, all the applications of individuals who indicated that they wanted to serve on the Zoning and Planning Board. And so the council members submitted the names of the candidates that we just interviewed. So thank you to everyone who came out. Thank you for everyone's time. Thank you to the members who have served and who are serving currently. We appreciate all the time. We know it takes a lot of time, and we all up here want to make this town a better place, just as all of you have said. So thank you very much. So with that, we're going to adjourn this work session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.